Alors, écoute, je ne sais pas si tu me connais. Tu as peut-être vu ma face à quelques reprises comme conseillère pédagogique, comme consultante avec le Consortium. Mais j'ai travaillé quelques années à l'École de la source avec ton super collègue André Pollard. Je pense qu'on a passé du temps ensemble. Comme enseignante, comme adjointe, j'ai beaucoup aimé ça. Puis quand je suis arrivée à Calgary, ma première tâche, c'était vraiment très complexe, mais ça incluait l'enseignement de l'anglais, donc ELA, en 7e, 8e, 9e année, et je donnais du soutien à la madame, la spécialiste d'anglais au primaire. Donc, j'ai passé énormément de temps avec le programme de ELA, que j'ai fait ce que je voulais avec, mais là, avec le nouveau programme, comme j'ai dit tantôt, j'aime beaucoup la structure, donc ça pourrait permettre à vraiment mieux planifier. C'est ça le but aujourd'hui. Alors, je ne te connais pas vraiment, Michel. Je pense que c'est la première fois que je te rencontre un à un.
Oui, sûrement. Moi, je suis quand même nouvelle en enseignement. C'est ma 2e année à temps plein ici à l'École du Nouveau Monde. Puis avant ça, j'ai fait de la suppléance, puis j'avais enseigné une année pour Rocky View.
Ah.
Alors, cette année, j'ai eu la chance d'enseigner l'anglais aux premières, 2e année et une classe de 3-4. Puis j'ai vraiment aimé l'expérience. Alors, l'année prochaine, la même chose, mais cette fois-ci, ça va être première année, 2e année ainsi que 6e année.
OK.
Alors, hey.
Est-ce que les profs à Nouveau Monde enseignent leur propre cours d'anglais? Je sais qu'André m'a dit que oui, il enseigne son anglais.
Certain. Il y a de plus en plus d'enseignants qui sont capables d'enseigner leur anglais. Alors, je sais qu'au niveau des 3e et 4e années, un enseignant va enseigner l'anglais pour 2 classes, puis ils vont s'échanger les tâches comme ça.
Ah,
Oui.
c'est bon.
Mais pour les autres années, c'est leur période de préparation lorsque c'est
Oui,
classe d'anglais.
justement. C'est ça. Dans certaines écoles, il y a des spécialistes, puis dans d'autres, il n'y en a pas. Même chose pour éducation physique. Ça dépend.
Oui.
Puis, ce n'est pas tout le monde qui a la capacité d'enseigner l'anglais et le français. C'est quand même assez complexe. Alors, je te montre une image. Peut-être que tu te sens comme ça à ce moment-là de l'année. Je sais que le mois de juin peut être un peu chargé.
Oui, je suis revenue à la surface depuis quelques jours, là, maintenant que l'été
Oh,
est terminé.
ben justement, mon amie qui enseigne aussi, c'est ce qu'elle disait, que, tu sais, rendu à une certaine date au mois de juin, tu sais, toutes mes évaluations sont faites, corrigées, j'ai fait mes bulletins, j'ai fait mes plans, la francisation aussi. Donc, quand je peux me mettre de côté, je peux me concentrer sur toutes les activités qui sont vraiment beaucoup plus agréables que, tu sais, ce qu'on fait d'habitude. Alors, je suis contente de savoir que tu es rendu là. Mais avec le nouveau curriculum, tout ce qu'on rajoute à l'assiette des enseignants, ça peut te donner l'impression que c'est lourd, ma tâche est trop grande, surtout à ce temps-là de l'année. Alors, comme tu vois, il y a quand même un petit bruit de sauvetage. Donc, je suis là pour aider, pour faciliter les choses et de rendre la tâche de planification pour l'année prochaine un peu plus facile.
Parfait.
Et amusante, j'espère. Alors, on va parler de 4 choses aujourd'hui. Je vais mentionner et expliquer très rapidement c'est quoi une portée séquence et on va partir à voir comment on peut mettre ça ensemble et vraiment utiliser les apprentissages essentiels pour décider qu'est-ce qu'on va enseigner au juste et quand. Je vais aussi te fournir un gabarit pour une planification annuelle, mais je vais te montrer comment l'utiliser, plus ou moins, te donner des petites pistes. Et la dernière chose qu'on va vraiment faire ensemble, c'est d'utiliser Boards, qui est dans Nous, Alberta, pour justement travailler ensemble, partager des ressources, des activités, peu importe nos idées, selon les résultats d'apprentissage. Alors, il y a 3 choses qui vont sortir de notre session aujourd'hui. 2 documents et un board qui est en ligne. Alors, pour la portée et séquence, c'est là où on se réfère aux résultats d'apprentissage. Comme je mentionnais tantôt, j'aime beaucoup la structure, donc on commence toujours avec l'idée organisatrice, la question directrice, ensuite le résultat d'apprentissage qui inclut les connaissances, compréhension et habiletés et procédures. Mais pour la portée séquence, on va vraiment se concentrer sur les énoncés de résultats d'apprentissage. Et on décide ce qu'on va enseigner selon le temps alloué et le niveau. Donc, si je considère la deuxième année, le temps alloué dans l'école Nouveau Monde au Franco-Sud, c'est vraiment la moitié qu'un cours d'anglais dans une école anglophone. Donc, il faut vraiment considérer ça quand on décide sur les apprentissages essentiels parce que c'est pas vrai qu'on va vraiment couvrir le curriculum au complet. On s'entend là-dessus. Puis, on décide quand on va enseigner ces concepts qui sont reliés aux résultats d'apprentissage, non seulement selon un ordre logique, mais il y a d'autres facteurs comme la dynamique de la classe, les saisons, des thèmes qu'on voudrait aborder, les besoins des élèves dans la classe, ce que moi j'aime enseigner. Donc, je peux décider que j'aime la poésie, donc je vais enseigner la poésie, tandis que quelqu'un d'autre va peut-être décider de ne pas l'inclure nécessairement, de parler, OK, de rimes et tout ça, mais pas nécessairement la poésie. Juste pour te donner un exemple.
Parfait. Puis il y a aussi le fait que, bon, ils ont des cours de français, là où ils apprennent beaucoup de choses qui sont transférables. Alors...
Tout à fait, tout à fait. Puis je suis contente que, ce que j'aime, parce que mes enfants sont dans une école francophone aussi, donc j'y crois beaucoup. Être bilingue dans notre pays, c'est tellement un atout. Donc, de voir comment on peut transférer d'une langue à l'autre, c'est très riche. Alors, on va parler un peu plus de ça dans quelques petites minutes. Pour toucher aux apprentissages essentiels, ça, c'est un concept qui est venu sur la table lors de la pandémie. Donc, au mois de mars 2020, on a décidé au Franco-Sud de vraiment mettre sur papier, du moins dans un Google Sheet, quels sont les éléments essentiels de nos programmes des matières de base. Pourquoi? Mais on a tout de suite vu que enseigner en ligne, ce n'est pas évident. Et il fallait vraiment tirer les choses et faire un triage sur ce qu'on va enseigner. Et c'est un peu la même idée ici. C'est de vraiment décider qu'est-ce que je dois enseigner en première, en deuxième, pour arriver en troisième, puis ensuite la quatrième année. Parce qu'en quatrième année, c'est là où le cours d'anglais prend toute la place normale, à 100%. Un tiers du temps en première, la moitié en deuxième, puis 2/3 du temps en troisième. C'est ce que j'avais calculé. On pense, comme tu viens de dire, au transfert d'habileté du cours de français. On réfléchit également sur l'année précédente, l'année qui suit, qu'est-ce qu'on va vraiment tenir en compte. Le programme de troisième année, par exemple, ne contient pas le résultat d'apprentissage de conscience phonologique, ce qui est intéressant parce que pour nous, comme j'ai dit, quelques écoles ne commencent pas le cours d'anglais avant la troisième année. Donc, c'est vraiment là où il faut se concentrer sur la conscience phonologique en anglais. Alors, gardez ça en tête, mais au Nouveau Monde, comme tu dis, ça commence en première année et il y a le transfert des habiletés.
Oui, ceci dit, comme j'ai remarqué, lorsque je faisais des cours de conscience phonologique avec mes premières et deuxième années, c'était vraiment pas difficile, même les plus faibles embarquaient dedans. Alors, je pense qu'à partir de la troisième année, ce n'est pas un si grand problème à cause que les enseignantes de français font un travail.
Oui, c'est vrai, c'est vrai. Ce qui est important de garder en tête, par contre, c'est qu'il y a des sons qu'on a en anglais qu'on n'a pas en français. Donc, c'est à ce niveau-là qu'il faut peut-être faire des mini-leçons qui se concentrent sur le son R
Ouais.
qu'on n'entend pas en français. Puis même mon fils rendu en 3e année, on s'inquiétait un petit peu, mais on s'est dit, sais-tu quoi là? Il apprend 2 langues en même temps. Il faut se démêler éventuellement, puis c'est ça qui est arrivé.
OK.
Alors, pour toucher aux apprentissages essentiels, c'est vraiment le gros travail d'aujourd'hui. Alors, j'ai pris un document qui a été créé par le Central Alberta Regional Consortium. Alors, il y a une consultante qui a créé le document, mais c'est basé strictement sur le nouveau programme, c'est-à-dire c'est du copier-coller, mais le programme en entier il est ici 2 fois. Donc, premier semestre, deuxième semestre. C'est la même chose qui est écrit dans les 2 parties. Alors, notre travail aujourd'hui, ça serait de vraiment identifier les apprentissages qu'on voudrait toucher pour toi l'an prochain en 2e année.
Okay.
Alors, c'est séparé comme ça. C'est un travail qu'on va faire en ce moment. Je ne pense pas que j'ai d'exemple. Est-ce que j'ai un exemple de... Non, j'ai laissé ça vierge. Et ça, c'est un document que je vais partager avec toi suite à la session d'aujourd'hui.
OK. Moi, j'ai imprimé le document que tu m'avais envoyé. Il est un petit peu différent que celui-là. 3 colonnes au lieu de 4, c'est la même chose?
Exact. Alors, ce qu'on a fait ici, si tu vois, il y a l'idée organisatrice, ça c'est pareil.
Oui.
Il y a la question directrice qui est pareil. Résultats d'apprentissage, pareil.
OK.
Sauf qu'ici, on a mis la compréhension au lieu de le mettre entre connaissances et habileté et procédure. Tu vois? Normalement, il est entre les 2.
OK.
Donc, on le met un peu, pas qu'on le met de côté, mais on le met de côté pour l'instant, juste pour voir, OK, qu'est-ce que mes élèves doivent savoir et faire pour que je puisse évaluer? Qu'est-ce que je dois enseigner? Dans le fond, c'est ça. Alors, c'est juste différent dans cet aspect-là.
OK, parfait.
Hors de ça, c'est doublé semestre 1, semestre 2. Notre travail, ça va être, comme j'ai dit, de surligner les éléments qu'on voudrait enseigner. Est-ce que ça va être en premier semestre, deuxième semestre ou tout au long de l'année?
Parfait.
Alors, si tu as eu la chance de regarder Text Forms and Structure en 2e année, puis j'aime vraiment comment ça commence parce que c'est vraiment une perspective autochtone aussi qui est inclue, qui est intégrée. Alors, ici, on parle des messages. Je suis désolée, mais le curriculum, ça ne se traduit pas pour le cours d'anglais.
On peut le lire en anglais aussi si c'est plus possible.
Justement, alors, creators share messages for different reasons. Messages can clarify ideas and information. Et encore là, messages can be shared digitally or non-digitally in a variety of forms, including, puis le mot including, c'est important parce que ça veut dire que c'est un élément obligatoire.
OK.
Stories, both real and imaginary, can follow a structure, including beginning, problem, solution, ending. Donc, on voit certaines différences. Il y a eu quand même un document qui compare l'ancien programme avec ce nouveau programme. Mais pour moi, le but aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas nécessairement de comparer les 2 programmes, mais c'est de voir, OK, est-ce que c'est quelque chose que je vais enseigner en début d'année, en fin d'année ou tout au long de l'année?
Okay.
Selon toi, parce que c'est pour toi, on est ici ensemble, c'est nous qui décidons.
Okay. Puis il faut faire cette décision-là aujourd'hui avant d'être super familière avec le curriculum?
Honnêtement, on va faire ça rapidement.
Okay.
Et après ça, lorsque toi, tu reçois le document, tu peux décider autrement. Tu peux dire, c'est-tu quoi là? Après avoir lu comme il faut en profondeur et après avoir considéré mon année, je vais éliminer cette partie-là ou je vais le changer. C'est à toi de décider.
OK.
C'est toi la maîtresse de ta classe et je ne vais pas enlever ça, mais de discuter ensemble, d'échanger de cette façon, ça peut nous permettre de vraiment voir qu'est-ce que je dois enseigner puis à quel moment.
OK. Super.
Alors, ici, j'ai tendance à dire, OK, on voit les messages, on lit les histoires aux élèves. Alors, ils vont être exposés dès le début à tout ça. Est-ce qu'on va évaluer, est-ce qu'on va se concentrer sur les éléments d'une histoire, c'est-à-dire beginning, problem, solution, ending, ou est-ce que ça va être plus la fin de l'année qu'on va...
Moi, ce qui a bien fonctionné, c'est que je l'ai introduit dès le début de l'année. Puis, tu sais, on faisait les stratégies de lecture, alors ça y va aussi à quelque part. Puis, à ce temps-ci de l'année, bien, ils sont capables d'identifier, pas de problème. Puis, c'est plus comme peut-être après Noël que je commence à porter plus attention sur l'aspect évaluatif. Pour ça,
excellent. Ben, sais-tu quoi? J'ai une idée d'abord.
Oui.
Alors, on peut utiliser plusieurs couleurs pour faire ça. C'est-à-dire, on peut exposer nos élèves à certains concepts en début d'année et à la fin de l'année, c'est là où je vais évaluer. Okay? Donc, c'est quelque chose que j'ai fait avec le dernier groupe. On a décidé que, sais-tu quoi, pour moi, c'est sûr que je vais toucher à ça à un certain moment, mais je ne vais jamais l'évaluer en première année.
Ouais.
Mais ça me permet de voir certains concepts. Et encore là, je pense que features that organize, clarify and enhance, c'est quelque chose qui peut être vu, débuté en début d'année et peut-être évalué vers la fin de l'année. Puis, il va y avoir des éléments qu'on ne va pas du tout inclure. Hein. Donc, garde ça en tête.
OK.
Là, le résultat d'apprentissage, c'est students explain how the organization of ideas and information within texts can support the purpose or meaning of messages. Alors, on va considérer plusieurs éléments d'un texte. Et encore là, je pense que ces éléments-là, on a tendance à évaluer plus vers la fin de l'année.
Lorsqu'on a eu la chance de pratiquer à travers différents textes, oui.
Exact, exact.
Bon matin à toutes et à tous. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le mardi 14 juin 2022. Voici vos prévisions météorologiques pour aujourd'hui. Il pleut.
Il pleut. Ah oui, hein? Okay, students explain how the organization of ideas and information within text can support the purpose or meaning of messages. Et encore là, on parlait des fiction, puis là, c'est non-fiction. Donc, c'est plus ou moins la même chose, je dirais. Puis ce que j'aime, ça permet aux élèves aussi de commencer à raconter leurs propres histoires. Qu'est-ce qu'eux, ils vivent, puis tu sais, de leur faire parler. Donc, même si on parle de texte.
Oui. Puis c'est ça la chose, comme cette année, ici, l'emphase, c'est vraiment sur l'oral, la production orale et la compréhension orale. Alors, lorsqu'il y avait des activités à l'écrit, c'était vraiment juste pour renforcer certaines notions qu'on avait fait à l'oral, mais ce n'était pas pour évaluer ça en tant que tel.
Voilà.
OK.
Voilà. Et première, deuxième année en anglais, c'est ça. Ça sert vraiment à se concentrer sur l'oral pour pouvoir bâtir une bonne fondation pour tout ce qui est lecture-écriture.
Exactement. Alors, nous, on a beaucoup fait de stratégies de lecture, mais c'était toujours à l'oral. Okay,
Ouais.
alors, ils n'ont jamais eu à lire leur propre petit livre.
Oui, et c'est normal.
Okay.
Et c'est voulu, vraiment. Okay. Parce que si on en met trop pour les élèves de cet âge-là qui donnent leur tout en français, c'est-à-dire, ils font beaucoup de lecture, ils font de l'écriture en deuxième année, ils se concentrent sur tu sais, les conventions, la structure d'une phrase, ponctuation, tout ça, mais ça va se transférer, c'est sûr. Mais il faut vraiment apprendre qu'est-ce qui de l'anglais, English Language Arts and Literature. Donc, là, on arrive à la poésie.
OK.
Je ne sais pas pour toi, qu'est-ce que tu en penses ici?
La poésie, on a bien aimé ça cette année.
Oui, OK.
Mais je les ai introduits au AABB, tu sais, sans savoir que c'était peut-être un peu trop avancé, mais ils ont vraiment aimé, puis ça a bien fonctionné. Je ne sais pas.
Je vais le mettre en vert au deuxième semestre. Comme ça donne la chance de le voir, puis peut-être pas de l'évaluer.
Oui.
OK. Parfait. Je vais juste voir. Oh, email with a link. Ah, tu vois, Liz essaie de... je vais juste répondre à Liz qui veut rentrer dans la session. OK.
Parfait.
Oups. On parle d'écriture, puis j'ai quasiment écrit right now, W-R-I-T-E. OK, ça ne sera pas long. Je vais juste envoyer ça. Arrêter le partage. OK. Voilà. Je m'en viens, Liz, je m'en viens. Elle parle seulement en anglais.
Oh, on peut parler anglais.
Ça va? OK.
Mais là, moi, je suis complètement... Ah, OK, je viens de trouver des poèmes. C'est beau.
Ouais. OK. J'essaie de... OK. Bobby. OK. Ça devrait fonctionner. On va continuer, on va attendre Liz, mais juste, elle a passé à travers tout ça avec moi la dernière fois pour la première année, donc elle ne va pas manquer grand-chose.
OK.
Alors, on passe à oral language. Alors, students examine and adjust listening and speaking to communicate effectively. Et là, c'est... Hi, Liz.
Okay. Good morning.
Your mute is still on.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Good.
there you go. Good morning. Michelle and I have already started working on, sorry that you didn't get the link. You didn't miss much. You were in the last session, so you caught the whole first part. Now we're really taking and I'll share my screen again. And don't forget, I'm recording this session. So we're taking this document, similar to the one we used last time. It's the same thing basically, but for the grade 2 curriculum. And we're breaking down the essential elements that we want to be teaching, right? What's going in the first semester, what's in the second semester, what's all year long, what are we evaluating, what are we just exposing the kids to? So that's where we're at. We're already on the second organizing idea, which is oral language. Okay. So oral language, here again, this is what we're doing the most of. So my thinking is whatever is in this section, we're doing not just at the beginning of the year, we're doing it all year long, and we're evaluating, we're constantly evaluating. So that makes it easy to go through this section because this is where we highlight all of it, basically. And this is also a nice place to integrate Indigenous perspectives. And by the way, this is something that the Consortium is working on for next year, providing training on how to integrate Indigenous perspectives. And I find it relatively easy in English language arts and literature because there is so much literature out there, especially in English. And just the ways of knowing and the ways of doing are very conducive to an English language arts and literature program. So keep that in mind. Stay tuned for that because they're amazing sessions. Okay, so learning outcomes, students examine and adjust listening and speaking to communicate effectively. Here again, that's what we're doing. They're listening, they're speaking, they're interacting. It's all oral communication. And that just helps develop the reading and writing skills that they're going to need as time goes on. And it's really explicit, which is, like I said, what I liked about this curriculum. So listening involves maintaining focus, and you teach how to maintain focus, how to ask and respond to questions and that kind of thing. And
that's definitely all ongoing.
It is all ongoing. Yeah. There's not a point at which you're not looking at that and evaluating it. Yeah. And another important organizing idea is vocabulary, right? So our students, when they're coming to us, and you both live different realities, you know, in Calgary and in Brooks, in terms of the dynamics you have in your schools, the communities that you have. So some students are coming to us very Anglo-dominant, some it's just the French that they're hearing. And other students, it's an entirely other language. So this is maybe their third or fourth language. So keeping that in mind, vocabulary becomes very important, because we might not think for ourselves, we know what snow is. We've probably always seen snow. We know what it is to go tobogganing, but some of our students have never seen snow. So the stories that include snowball fights, snowmen, sledding, and that kind of thing, it's the kind of thing we want to keep in the forefront, and we want to introduce vocabulary, tier 2 words, like it says in the program, in order for our students to really get a sense of what it is they're reading. So that feeds their comprehension later on.
So we would do that orally, but here they're talking about homophones and that sort of thing. That's more in the written form, right? So
that's right.
I think at Nouveau we would probably skip that part.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would think so too. I think that's the type of thing you're going to start to look at more in grade 3 even. And even then, possibly even grade 4, like in grade 3 a bit, and really focus on some of those conventions and bits of vocabulary in grade 4.
Okay.
So like alliteration, onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much repetition, but even then, as a device, it's not something we're going to necessarily introduce to students. It may be something they're exposed to, but it's not a concept that will be evaluated.
Okay.
Okay, so I would venture to say that taking that into consideration, we're leaving this green in here, right? So again, it's more of a written aspect.
That's right.
Something that's written and in reading, sorry.
Okay.
Students build vocabulary by connecting morphemes and words to their meanings. Okay, here again, this can be an oral aspect, right? When we're talking about adding the ing or the ed to the ending of a word. So when we're thinking about past tense, I know a lot of our students, especially if they're francophone dominant, then adding that ed at the end of a word in past tense is very difficult. But it's something that if we tackle early on, they get a sense of, they're better equipped to then understand how to read the words later on. For me, it makes me think of the ENT at the end of a word when it's conjugated troisième personne plurielle. You know, oftentimes our Anglo students will pronounce that ENT at the end of the word when it shouldn't be pronounced. So to me, it's the same kind of switch. It's something that doesn't transfer well from one language to another, but that needs to be taught explicitly. Okay. So here I want to say that we're going to see it all the time. And I'm going to put it in green, because I think it's something, like I said, we should keep in mind for the oral aspect, but maybe not yet for the written. Okay, and those are notes when you get these documents. Those are notes you can definitely make to yourself, right? You can say, okay, yeah, I'm going to see it, and I'm only going to, you know, I'm really only going to focus on the ing, ed ending and not the rest that I see here. So this is yours to use afterwards. And phonological awareness, really it is foundational. So consonant blends, all that kind of thing, blending, and matching phonemes, graphemes, that's something that's going to be seen all year.
Yeah.
Oops.
We started doing that explicitly right after Christmas, and they were already really good at it. So
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, that's perfect. It's fun to play with words.
Mhm.
They're used to doing it in kindergarten, so
Yeah.
they do get, a nice base of how to manipulate language. And phonics, now phonics is the foundation for reading. And so is this something that at the beginning of the year, we're going to expose them to? How do you see that?
I think in grade 2, it would be towards, like this year I started in April
Mhm.
because the French teachers didn't really want me to tackle it too early. They were afraid. But if I had my way, I think I would start right after Christmas.
Yeah, that's when I started this year, was January
Yeah.
with this. And it helps that I have a mixed class because my grade 1s were listening while I was explicitly teaching this to my grade 2s.
Yeah.
Yep.
I found that, I had a few grade 3 students that still had not acquired that. So it's
Yeah.
definitely- I would think it's important to do it in grade 2.
Yeah.
Mhm. And now I've done quite a bit of reading lately on the science of reading. And I think that's just some really important stuff to bring up, because in the past and the not too distant past, there's been a lot of debate around teaching phonics and teaching whole language. And are they really opposed? And if they are, which is the better way to go? You know what? When I went to school, I remember doing phonics. I think phonics is a great basis. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's something that needs to be taught explicitly, like that. And including whole language, of course. I mean, it is what we do. There is a whole language aspect to how we teach the course. But good point. We'll leave that in the second semester. And we're already on to fluency. We're just whipping right through this. Yeah, there's no way this is going to take us 2 hours today.
For Liz, though, do you teach phonics to grade 1 students or only in grade 2?
No, I start with grade 1 because I start them reading about halfway through the year, and next year I might even start a little earlier.
Okay,
like
you're
at
reading in
home reading.
actual books, so you're not doing it orally, you're doing it with prints?
Yeah, I told them last week that I kind of offload reading with the kids to the parents by sending books home and saying, here's what you're doing.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Okay. I don't think I would be allowed to do that though at the school.
Oh,
Because there's a big focus on oral language at Nouveau. And in many schools, right, it's pretty structured so that for the English class in grades 1 and 2, the focus is almost strictly on oral language, so that you build a good foundation in order to, build up their reading and writing next. But sometimes in smaller class sizes, or when you have like a mixed class, it's a little easier to start introducing the reading aspect at an earlier age. And you could be pushing your students outside of their comfort zone, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I like how you do that, Liz, in terms of offloading that to the parents. Here's some books, read these together, start sounding out the words, start doing things like that. And parents are usually really on board with that kind of thing.
the number one question I get during parent-teacher interviews is, what can I do to support my child's learning? And I'm like, read with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely, best thing you can do, read with them.
Yeah. And studies have shown that a certain amount of reading every day leads to greater vocabulary, greater comprehension, all of that good stuff later on, because by the time they hit grade 3, ostensibly they should be reading to learn and not learning to read. Right? So that transfer eventually happens. Now, does it happen in all of our Francophone schools? It's not easy for English, but like we mentioned earlier, those skills that are transferred from French are really helpful for us. Okay, now fluency has to do with reading, right? Letter comment, how, you know, how they're getting through it, how they're decoding and making their way through a certain number of high frequency words automatically, how they're blending their sounds, applying that to the meaning of words. At what point are we looking at evaluating fluency?
For me, I wouldn't evaluate it, but when I do my read alouds, I explicitly teach about reading with expression. And if I make a mistake, I say, oh, you know, or I read with the wrong intonation. I say, oh, that was not proper. Let me reread this properly. And so that's as far as I go when it comes to fluency.
Okay. And there's nothing that prohibits us from putting up a word wall with some high frequency words so that they see them on a regular basis. So exposing them to all of that is great, and moving them towards fluency. So I will leave it all in green as opposed to the bright yellow. Again, reading fluency is supported by all of those wonderful things, especially when they're getting it outside of the classroom, right? They're getting it at home. Again, the right intonation, punctuation, quotation marks, that kind of thing. And comprehension, this is where we talk about text comprehension. So we're really specific to reading, but it even starts off by saying texts that are listened to can contain more complex language and information than text read independently, right? So we are giving our students the opportunity to listen to reading and all the way through, right? There's nothing wrong with that at all levels. That can lead to discussions about certain topics. It's an easier way to introduce some more complex themes in the classroom, visual representations, right? You know, des bandes dessinées, any comic strip is an interesting way to, you know, start that whole process. So I think we can leave this green, but up to you to decide, you know, if I might want to evaluate this particular aspect in the second half of the year. And understanding of print texts read independently. So this is where, like at Nouveau Monde, you're not doing this. No. So
What's that?
Sorry, students examine and apply a variety of processes to comprehend texts, and the knowledge is understanding of print texts read independently involves discussions, visual representations, and writing. So that's something that Michelle won't touch upon in grade 2. I'm going to leave that blank. And that when I've gone through this in the recent past, I said to myself, well, it's great if I have parts that are not at all highlighted, because then in my head, okay, I only have half the time to teach all of this. No, I don't have to teach all of it. So that takes a little bit of the pressure off. And word solving. Well, you know, this might be something I would put in a light green, and I wouldn't, maybe not even this part. Just to start working on strategies for word solving, right? How can I take a word and break it down so that I can start reading it with more fluency? Well, it could be something that could be looked at in the second term or not at all. So I'll leave it like that. And the topic of a text can contain the main idea. So here again, I'm going to leave that blank. We're not dealing with reading in all of our schools.
But that's something I would do orally, because we always explore like the cover page and the title and what do you think the story is going to be about, that sort of thing.
Perfect. So it's a very visual thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
reading left to right and that kind of thing. Those are all little details that hopefully they've gotten. And so you can easily observe your students to see what they've gotten from kindergarten grade 1, both in French and in English. The process of connections could be made to ideas and information in text, including similarities and differences within a text and between texts. Is this something that you'll be looking at with your students?
The question words.
Yeah, on the bottom here. Shall I make this bigger? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that one's. So this is my first year having the full year to teach. And so I've really got a sense of how much time I have.
Yeah.
And how to focus in on what's the most important thing. And with the limited amount of time that I have with these students, like I have 4, next year I will have 4 40-minute classes a week.
In a week or in a cycle? In
a week, like, okay. Yeah, 4 40 minutes. Yeah, we do it by the week here.
Yeah.
So that's even a little more time than I had this year.
Yeah, that is more time.
That's a lot. That's double of what we have, because we have 2 sessions of 40 minutes per week.
Yeah.
But in that time, I have to teach both grade 1 and 2. So I look for all the overlap I can find.
Yeah, and I think even in the new program, between grades 1 and 2, there's quite a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there really is, and I'm grateful for it. But with these questions, these who, what, when, where, when, why, all of those, I've really been questioning, because they're learning in French, asking questions and the question phrases or words. And so this one, I think I would leave till grade 3.
Perfect. Because that's a nice way also to introduce the reading comprehension that is, right? So when they get into reading, how to understand what's in a text by asking those questions. It's a reading strategy in the end as well.
I mean, you do ask it as you are reading a book.
Yeah.
Like, who's it about? What are they doing?
Right. And
it comes up in sequencing too, but it's not something that I'm necessarily going to explicitly. Yeah, it's a time constraint thing, honestly, because I would totally do this given the amount of time that I would have if I was in an English school.
But like I said from the start, we need to consider the time constraint, right?
Yeah. But for me, I would have time, I would put a lot of emphasis on that sort of thing orally, because I don't take any time with the print material, like independent reading, that sort of things.
Yeah.
So when we're doing this board, like as you've mentioned before, we can modify it for our school's needs, right?
That's right. So when I send it to you, I'll send it to you in lecture seul, and then you can decide to make a copy for yourself and really tease out the things that you want. And then this will help you with the next step I'm going to show you. So the next step is really just a template of lesson planning, year-long planning that turns into unit planning, that turns into lesson planning, right? So it's a nice little template that I found that can be very useful. And here again, predicting is also the kind of thing with those questions that can be introduced orally, or Liz, not at all, right? It can be not touched at all.
Well, funny enough, actually,
this is the kind of thing.
Our final project for the year has been taking some pictures, asking what's the problem, how are they going to solve the problem. And right now with a sub, they're actually working through, how do I turn that into a story? So processing, nice. Just a 6-step story. I have a little template to make a booklet, so they have a product in the end. And so they're actually thinking their way through this. And so they're getting the other, but not, as I said, explicitly.
That's great. That's a great project.
In June, you need something that's completely engaging to keep them in.
Yeah, Yeah, and a product at the end. I find that students really appreciate that, because even mine who are a little bit older come home with, oh, look what I did. I'm so proud.
Yeah.
You know, it's great. Okay, and writing, really, our students aren't there. Our students aren't there because we're not going to do that in grade 1. The focus is very much oral. We're starting, you know, with our phonological awareness, our phonics. We're making our way to writing. But in my experience with these younger grades, we're not really going to do much of this at all. Will we practice? Will we, you know, get to some of it, like in this project you're doing with your students? Yes. But to what extent? And what's going to be evaluated? Is it the writing that's going to be evaluated, or some other aspect that's further on in the curriculum? Right. We're not going to touch on run-on sentences. We might talk about it. We might, you know, a student might ramble on about something and say, whoa, I'm going to stop you there. Let's see how many ideas you have. There's that idea. That's a sentence. There's that idea. That is another sentence, but it's not in writing. So I'm not even going to color this part. And as I make my way through, when we're on to conventions, we're really talking about grammar, spelling, punctuation. Right here again, for me, these are writing conventions. And so they've been introduced to capitalization. They've been introduced to punctuation. They've seen it in French. So I would question, am I really going to touch on this to a great extent? They'll be exposed to it. What do you think, Liz?
Well, I teach grade 12.
Yeah.
All the way down. And this is something that a lot of my students struggle with, because you don't capitalize months and weeks in French. You don't even capitalize je, right? So capitalizing eyes is like, I'm like, just don't make me cry. Capitalize your eyes. Yeah. Okay. Like, and so all the way to grade 12. So yeah, actually, I am totally focusing on this in grade 1 and 2, because this is the advantage of teaching all the way to grade 12. I can see these issues at grade 12 and go, I'm going to pull this back a little and start early, because
well, I'm going to highlight that. Capitalize.
And this is something when I'm teaching my grade 1 and 2s, I say, in French, you do it this way. Yeah, in English, it's a little different. And so being able to say, yes, exactly. In French, don't capitalize that. But in English, absolutely. Nationalities. Oh, nationalities is another big one.
Yeah, I've seen that struggle with students across the spectrum, like you say, all the way up to grade 12. And it is something that when I was teaching 7, 8, and 9, I went on ad nauseum about, right, where you put your capitals and how that goes. But even the elements of a story when you're writing are different. There are different conventions in French and in English. And I always make the reference, this is what you learned in French, but this is how it is in English. And so it's a good tool to have that, to be able to move forward with them, to show them there's a difference. And so if I move on then, you talk then about what a sentence is, what a pronoun is, an adjective, an adverb. I mean,
we focused on nouns and verbs.
Okay. Michelle?
We talk a little bit about it, but just in passing type of thing.
Okay. So I'm going to highlight this in green.
Yeah,
there's,
sorry.
To some extent, this gets covered.
I cover this in depth in grade 3 and 4.
Okay. Yeah. Then that works, right? If you cover it in depth in grades 3 and 4, that makes sense. They're developmentally more aware to be able to handle this kind of baggage. And so if we're slowly exposing them to it, they should be ready for it by then. And spelling patterns.
This I have been teaching, but what I found when I got here is that families here love spelling tests. so I use that to teach these conventions, and I know my older kids struggle with this as well, is when do we have a silent E? And so just the little things, like if you have a word that ends in two consonants, as long as the last one's not an L, you will never have an E on the end. Whereas in French, that's how you feminize
Right.
a vowel or
Yep. A noun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the E on the end. And so there are rules that I am learning because I do them automatically. And now I have to say, okay, where do you look for that? And so having that silent E is a conversation that we have in grade 1 and 2.
Okay.
Mostly grade 2, the grade 1s listen in.
Okay.
I've been introducing them to this with little clips from Brain Pop Jr.
Oh,
So
nice.
tune them in to the idea, but we didn't dwell on it, but they, I think they're learning quite a bit, just like, you know.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, Brain Pop Junior is awesome. Okay, knowledge of words and word parts can be applied to the spelling of new words. I would have a tendency to sort of not highlight this part.
Yeah. Grade 3, I would do that.
Yeah, personal word lists for me are not until grade 3 at the earliest.
I had big ideas at the beginning of this year, and I started out with the personal dictionary for each of them, and we never used it. Never, not even once.
No.
Like, okay, I've learned something.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's what we're there for too, right? But yeah, and I certainly don't want teachers to feel like, and it's great to have lofty goals, to have excellence as your goal. However, it's a lot to cover in half the time that English teachers get in English schools. It's a lot. So I want to relieve some of that pressure by showing you that, you know what, it's not going to be all yellow all day long. There are going to be elements that you'll see, elements that you won't have to evaluate. Look at that. I barely have any yellow. There's a lot of green there. So it's really in the oral language we want to focus. I believe in that as well. All right, so I'm going through this quickly just to give us an aperçu. Perfect. And this is what I will share with both of you and those who have signed up but who aren't here today. And so if we move on from here, les apprentissages essentiels, we're going to be looking at now la planification annuelle. So our year-long planning, our year at a glance, and this is, Liz, what you saw last time with me. I'm going to show you now, Michelle, this template, which comes from a teacher in the US. So when she talks about standards, and her websites are on here as well, about how to do year-long planning and unit planning and lesson planning. I find her stuff really on point, and because she teaches English language arts, it even speaks more to how an English teacher might plan for the year. And so I took the time to translate parts of it. This I couldn't translate because I didn't have access to it. But again, her free resources are there. But how to use this, there are various ways, right? So there's a year-long planning that's divided in quarters. And then there's one that's divided in 6-week blocks. And then once you get through that, then there's planning that happens weekly. And then there's another part where you can really use a theme or a unit and plan that way. So let's move on to that, because you'll both get a copy of this as well. Liz, you've already received it, I think.
Yeah.
And so this is a blank template of what not semester planning, but a quarterly planning would look like, right? So you might put in here, this is what I want to cover in the first quarter of the year. So these two together would make my first half of the year. And given that we have 2 report cards, then that's how that would work, right? This is everything I would cover in the first half. This is everything I would cover in the second half of the year. And using that document that we just went through, it's easy to sort of plug in the big ideas, right? The learning outcomes or the résultats d'apprentissage. And then, here's an example, and this is what I did for the grade 1. I sort of teased out the just the organizing ideas, and I placed them in here. What should we cover? And I think I even included conventions when I shouldn't have in the second half of the year. So again, just an example of something you could put together using this template. What I like even more is the 6-week block planning is interesting, because then I can become even more precise in which learning outcomes I'm going to tackle in a 6-week block. That way I can really see, like, I'm going to cover this part of oral language. I'm going to do these things, look at this in terms of the reading perhaps, and move on from there. So that gives you how many? 6-week sessions, right? So it covers most of the year. And then if I'm again looking at the year-long planning, this is something that's set up by week using concepts, learning outcomes, resources, and notes. So the woman who put this together, she always makes sure to say, be careful when you're planning by week, because when you do that, you also have to take into consideration the time the students need to be working on what you've taught. So not just the lesson, but that time, and a bit of rattrapage, right? So whatever students might have missed, and that really goes along with the group that you have. You have a lot of students who are in difficulty, a lot of students who are behind. And if that's the case, how are you going to organize your time so that you're making sure you've got everybody where they are? So I like this particular one because it really breaks it down. And next year, my plan, starting in the fall, is to talk about conceptual understanding. And conceptual understanding is such a great way to break down the program in terms of its concepts and how to teach by those concepts. Anyway, like I said, that's for next year. It's not to worry about now, but it might be something that you can find useful in this planning template. Again, I think there's about 9 of these weeks like that. Plus, there's a blank one, right? So if you want to, let's say, choose this by month or whatever the case may be, that template is there for you to use as you wish. And then the unit planning, here are the links to her blogs or her website. And to do this, this is really where I would use the theme or the unit that I might want to cover, right? So when I taught high school, I worked on a humanitarian theme. The books that I introduced were based on that theme. And so I really would focus on the question directrice, the guiding question, and it'd be more of planning by project, right? That would be the way I would look at this. And so even though you're looking at the different elements of language, you're also adding the touch of something that's really captured their interest. For me, that's the best way to do it. Something that really speaks to them, that helps them to consolidate their learning. So I think there's a month like this. So days 1 to 10, 11 to 20, and 21 to 30. And that's it for this particular resource, which, like I said, I really like it. I like the way it's broken down. You don't need to use it, but it's something that I find helpful. And the last thing that I want to cover is this. Okay, so here, just before we move on to New Learn Alberta, I've included some of the workshops that are offered either by the Francophone Consortium, by SAPDC, by ERLC, and there are so many consortia in Alberta. There is CARC, CRC, and they all have some great workshops now through the summer and in the fall. So in the summer, actually, I'm going to show this to you right now because I find it, I'm considering doing this. Here it is. The summer lit program given by, is it SAPDC? Yeah, the Southern Alberta Professional Development Consortium. So the stories we tell, expanding our view of literacy. And not everybody likes to do stuff over the summer, and I totally respect that. There's no judgment. I like to take the summer off too, but every once in a while, if there's something really interesting, and this looks very interesting, especially when I'm considering oral language. So when characters speak by Catherine Hernandez, she's just the opening session. And then I looked through it and I thought, oh, wow, this is super interesting, especially when I want to incorporate Indigenous perspectives. It's just great little sessions, and you don't have to participate in all of them, but some of them are very interesting. Infusing oral language in our classrooms, right? There are other offerings as well that might be interesting to you. So again, this is linked right here, Atelier SAPBC. Okay, so you'll get this presentation too. Don't worry about that. You'll have all the links to everything. And the last thing I wanted to tackle with you today is boards. So if you haven't had the chance to look through New Learn Alberta, this is my favorite part of New Learn Alberta, is using boards. So what I shared with the grade 1 group last time, I basically copied and created another board. So the board that I created, I will share with you. But you'll be in collaboration mode, which means you can then input your ideas into this board. Bless you, Liz. And so this is really for grade 2, and all the learning outcomes should be there. I believe I took them from the grade 2. Anyway, I can check that out. But just to give you an example, each section is based on the organizing idea. And then the learning outcomes under that organizing idea are included in that section. So when it comes to oral language, right, if I were to pop into this one, this explains what the learning outcome is, what some resources are that can be included, some of the competency progressions, literacy progressions, and of course the numeracy progressions. But the most important part for me is really the resources that I can tease out of it and the ideas that I can put into it. So here, this resource was already in New Learn Alberta. And so I added it because I find it interesting. It also includes an Indigenous perspective. In order to view the resource, I just click here, and it's a video. It's a video I might watch in order to perhaps learn how to share a story with a group. And so this woman goes through just telling stories with her students who are in front of her. She's in a school that is in Wetaskiwin, and so many of her students are Indigenous and come from that area. And so she shows, and it's a grade 3 class, she shows how to really incorporate storytelling into the learning. So that resource is excellent. But the nice thing is that I'm also able to search out my own activities that I might like and include it in my board. Okay, so this is just something I found online, 7 listening activities to get your students attentive and ready to learn. We talked earlier about explicitly teaching what listening is. And so this is just a series of little activities that can be done in the classroom, right? How to model good listening strategies, and on and on. To come back to boards, like I said, when I go to edit it, this is where I add my content. But this is also where I can do my sharing, which is what I'm going to do right now. So Michelle, that's how you spell your name, correct? And it's, do I have it right? I have it right in front of me, actually.
Yeah, that's the right way. Sorry, I forgot I had mute on.
Oh, so if you've signed up for New Learn Alberta, this will work, but you didn't.
I did.
Okay.
I have
Did
my
you?
account. Oh, but you know what? It might be under my personal email address.
Ah, okay.
I guess I should switch it to Franco-Sud.
Yeah, so when you switch it to Franco-Sud, and let me know, because
Okay.
I'll send you an email today. So once you get that done and respond to that email, then I'll know I can add you in as collaborator. But I know that Liz,
Yeah.
you've already signed up, yeah? Yeah, so you see, so I've added Liz to collaborate and not just in view. So given that I've done that, what that allows Liz to do is to now go in at any time she chooses, and she can add to this particular board. Okay. So my goal is, as I go through these sessions, the grade 1, the grade 2, the grade 3, what I'm asking the teachers to do is to sign up to New Learn Alberta, get added to the board, which is my job. And then once you've done that, when you have time, whenever it is, it could be during the course of the year. Oh, I've done this really cool activity. Everybody needs to know about it. You add it to the board under the right learning outcome, the right résultat d'apprentissage. And that way it becomes really a shared experience and nobody is reinventing the wheel. Everybody is working for themselves and for each other. And that allows us to stay away from teachers, pay teachers all the time and really work, because when it comes down to it, we're all in francophone schools. We all have similar realities, and that really allows us to respond to the students' needs. Okay, so for me, boards is an important aspect for that reason. So
Is it okay if I take a minute to go use the washroom?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. Yeah, let's take 5 and come back, and then we'll just wrap it up after that. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thanks. Attends, je vais juste partager mon écran une autre fois. Puis je vais te montrer ce que tu peux trouver sur New Learn Alberta. Vraiment, voici les boards qui m'appartiennent.
OK.
En haut ici, My Boards. Donc, et comme tu vois, c'est partagé.
OK.
Mais tout ça, c'est partagé avec moi. C'est un peu comme Drive.
OK.
J'ai mon disque qui est partagé avec moi. Alors, tu peux retrouver plein de plans de leçons. Tu sais, drop the E, spelling pattern, sample lesson plan. Si je clique là-dessus, c'est vraiment 2e année en plus.
OK.
Je vois, OK, le résultat d'apprentissage, qu'est-ce qui est inclus? Donc, les connaissances, compréhension, habileté et procédure. Puis quelques notes, c'est-à-dire, voici comment faire la leçon.
Ouais.
Et des liens pour le matériel en lien avec la leçon. Okay. C'est vraiment juste ça. D'autres notes. Et quand tu crées ton propre board, tu peux inclure des notes privées pour toi-même. Mettons, tu voudrais le partager avec quelqu'un d'autre. Tu peux, puis l'autre personne ne va pas voir tes notes privées. Donc, tu as des notes et des notes privées.
Okay.
Et c'est tellement facile. Et si tu veux en apprendre plus, Rock, qui était ici tantôt pour m'aider avec le soutien technique, à l'automne, il va donner je ne sais pas si c'est des sessions ou de l'accompagnement pour pouvoir non seulement accéder à Boards, mais comment vraiment l'utiliser, profiter de cet aspect-là. Mais moi, je suis quelqu'un qui aime découvrir moi-même.
Mm-hmm.
Donc, j'ai rentré dedans et il y a même, je vais te montrer aussi, Welcome to Boards. Donc, ça te montre comment l'utiliser. Il y a même une petite vidéo.
OK.
C'est seulement en anglais, c'est 15 minutes, mais ça fait le tour au complet de New Learn Alberta et comment utiliser Boards.
OK. Moi, la raison pour laquelle je l'avais mis sous mon adresse personnelle, c'est parce que, bon, j'avais un contrat temporaire cette année, puis là, c'est provisoire. Mais tu sais, si jamais je quitte Franco-Sud pour un autre conseil scolaire, là, c'est tout perdu, hein?
Oui, c'est vrai. Alors, c'est pas grave que tu as utilisé ton compte personnel. Dans le fond, si je retourne dans Boards, je peux le partager avec ton compte personnel.
Ouais.
Si tu me donnes l'adresse.
OK.
Pour que je puisse faire le partage.
Parfait.
Okay, so like I said, that really for me covers what I wanted to cover with you today, what I wanted to go over with you today. So I'm hoping that this is more how you're feeling. Maybe you were already feeling like this because all your report cards are done, but I want you to feel relief that you're not on your own. I'm again with you again next year. I'll be supporting you in whatever ways I can. For me, this is work that we do together. So that's why my sessions are really in this format. Right. Hopefully I'm not talking at you the whole time. And like I asked my group last time, what would you like to see for next year? I want to tailor my sessions to what you want. What are you looking for?
Well, I like that sharing of resources idea because especially when you're fairly new at teaching a subject, it's a big part of
That's it.
Best practice is always a good one as well.
Perfect. I have that down. That's twice now I've heard that, so it's highlighted.
Okay, good. Yeah. That would be my main.
Okay.
Things.
We touched on a bit of the planning today, right? A big part of it. I know assessment evaluation is something that some people are interested in, and the goal is to cover some of that as well.
Yeah, and that was something we talked about in grade 1 too, is that we have our communications 1, 2, 3, lecture, écriture in the report cards, and this is going to be different.
So because that's a decision made at the conseil level, I have no say in it. I have no idea what's going on. So I would assume, and I'm only assuming, that all the 4 conseils francophones en Alberta, I'm assuming that they're going to change the report cards to reflect the new curriculum. But that's a huge job. Like, I know that that's a big, big job. And because of the way it's structured with like 8 or 9 organizing ideas, are they going by organizing ideas? Are they regrouping the learning outcomes? How are they going to tackle it? I don't know. Hopefully there'll be a committee formed so that those decisions can be made and made quickly, so that by the time you're ready to write your first report cards in January, way before that, you'll know how to process your evaluations. But there is the possibility throughout this program to put stuff together, right? To really mix, phonological awareness with with comprehension, with whatever. You can definitely play with how you're evaluating several elements at the same time. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So for me, evaluation would be a natural progression because it's part of our planning anyway. Planning, resources, and evaluation about covers it. There are also sometimes these approches pédagogiques, right? So pedagogical approaches and methods that could be interesting. And I know, like I said, the other consortia really focus a lot on those approaches, pedagogical approaches that can help teach certain concepts. I participated in a session last week with Tiffany Brown about conceptual understanding, and it was phenomenal. It was really well done for like all ages, right? And it really had the focus of English language arts and literature. So she took the new curriculum and she showed how to use it to tease out the concepts and how to teach that. So I'm planning on using some of her methods in my next workshops next year.
I have
Yeah.
a question.
Sorry, I said it while my microphone was off, but having some teachers talk about how they use it in their classroom, like specifically, how do you teach diagraphs in your classroom? What methodologies do you use? Do you use games? Do you use Like,
You're talking to me?
well,
you're asking in general.
yeah, having had the
Okay.
specific like application of what works in your classroom and can I apply it in mine?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you mind repeating your questions? I really didn't.
Sorry, I was wondering if we could hear from teachers about how they are personally applying these concepts or these outcomes, how they are teaching things in their classroom. So I use the example of digraphs or morphemes.
Right. And you have a certain way you teach it in your classroom, lessons that you follow and activities that you do, that's the kind of thing you would share out and you'd be looking for, yeah, great. I take note of that.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
vas-y, Michelle.
Oh, no. I thought she was asking me
Okay.
directly how I teach in my class, and I can certainly share now.
Go
but
ahead, please share now.
general.
We have time. That's what we're here for.
Well, I teach a lot with music and that sort of thing. So, a little clip and then we'll see. Yeah, I love Jack Hartman. I don't know if you've heard. A lot of read aloud, that sort of thing. Little video clips and a lot of discussions. And just sometimes for the morning chat, I'll group them and they have to talk amongst themselves. And then I'll pick somebody and just ask them to tell us about the other students' weekend. So just practicing active listening and just, I think, just basic things like that. But it's a lot of sharing, I find, and music, because that engages students. They like it. And even in the body movement activities, there's always something to be learned. So syllables, clap the syllables. And that's
even spelling words out.
Yeah.
Standing up and using your whole body to spell letters. And I think that's great. Yeah, we do that a lot in kindergarten.
We use a lot of just mini clips. Never.
Ça va être à l'intérieur, la récréation.
Yeah.
Quelle surprise.
Yeah, there's not going to be any flooding. There's been warnings for that.
I'll find the high ground. Those are great. I wrote down those things that you use, Michelle, in your classroom. And if it's okay with you, whatever we've done in this session today, I'm putting in an email and I send out to all the participants, those who are here and those who are just going to end up watching at the end, or who will join us maybe for the next session for grade 3.
Yeah. I have a question, Barbara.
Yeah.
If we have questions about this program, or first of all, are you our resource person? Or I know that René Bellumeur also does something with English, or is it more ESL? Or I'm a little confused.
I don't know. I don't blame your confusion. I totally get it. So I'm going to explain my role and you'll understand why you're confused, I think. Okay. So I work for Franco-Sud and I became conseillère pédagogique last year. And the role of the conseillère pédagogique last year was different from what it is this year. And so André has been, has your school, has La Mosaïque. And I think Elise has Le Ruisseau, right? So you each have your own conseillère pédagogique. I was conseillère pédagogique for 3 schools within the conseil. And our roles were to support teachers in whatever, right? In terms of their pedagogy, special needs, whatever the case may be, we were there to answer questions, work through things with you, co-teach, whatever.
And not just in English.
And not just in English, everything. Okay. Now, each conseillère pédagogique is also given a file, a dossier. So André's dossier is English language arts, but mostly ESL, right? English as a second language. And so her focus has been to regroup the English teachers so that they can work together, and that's within the Franco-Sud. She also maybe gives reminders about when to fill in reports for ESL, like francisation, right? And so Elise, let's say, has the dossier of technologie d'aide. I have a dossier of Première Nation Métis Inuit. So we each have our own dossiers those are just examples. However, this year, when I was doing my coaching, let's say, I was also working part-time with the consortium, with the CPFPP. as a consultant. And so my role as a consultant for the consortium is to support all the francophone schools in all of Alberta. So that's 4 conseils francophones. It's similar, but not quite the same. So I give workshops, I moderate workshops, I do coaching, and it had a lot more to do with l'approche collaborative, réconciliation, those types of things. So I'm supporting school districts, school leaders, teachers in this way.
Okay.
And so if you have questions, you actually have 2 resource people. You can talk to André about anything ELA, or in your case, in your school, anything that's pedagogy related, or you can talk to me, and it can be anything also, because I'm pretty well just as trained as André, but when it comes to the new curriculum, I probably have a leg up because I've spent a lot more time working on that recently. So when it comes to the new curriculum, feel free to contact me at any time. Also feel free to contact either André or Elise for anything within your schools, because they're always fantastic in terms of the support that you'll get from them.
Perfect. Okay.
I hope that clarifies it a little.
It does, because I wasn't too sure, and when you're not too sure, you
ask.
Sometimes, yeah. Okay.
It's complicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
I covered everything that I wanted to cover with you, but again, I'm here for your questions, whatever you need from me. And if you have nothing else, it's 10 o'clock. So we ended earlier than I, planned for, but at the same time, there are just 3 of us. So
it does make things go fast.
It makes things go faster.
Well, thank you very much. It was very informative.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Thank you.
Yeah, you'll be getting from the consortium, probably not from me directly, but from somebody at the consortium, an evaluation to fill out a little survey. If you want to take the time to do that, it helps me to improve what I do. So it's always appreciated. But like I said, you're going to be getting all this stuff from me at some point today.
Okay, sounds good. Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have yourselves a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.